The Station with Attitude. KCC Live.
Hi there, you're listening to Amy on Out There on KCC Live. So this show today is going to be on men. It's the men's show. We're going to be looking at mental health and other various issues that men face. The last show we did was on women. It coincided with International Women's Day. And in the interest of equality, because we are all about that over on Out There, we've decided to do a men's show. So we're going to have loads of people who were involved in this show. There's some fantastic people sharing their stories. So keep tuned, listen up. More after this.
This is KCC Live.
Hi, welcome back. You're listening to Amy on Out There on KCC Live. Our show this week is based on men. It's the men's show. And we're looking at mental health as our first topic to cover. We asked lots of men what their opinions were on mental health. And this is what they had to say.
I first became depressed after being diagnosed with diabetes back in 2006. I was in the middle of my second year of university, and the stress of being diagnosed with a long-term illness and the mounting deadlines just sort of started all crashing down on me. I began getting upset at just even like the silliest thing. I even came close to quitting university, but I managed to power through without any help somehow. And looking back on it, it was the worst thing I could have done. But I finally sought help in 2015. After I became withdrawn from life. Again, it was related to my diabetes as I began to hate myself. Became withdrawn from friends and family, making excuses for not going to events or meetups. While all the while just hiding under the covers in my room. And even whether it was an unconscious or unconscious thing I was doing, I self-harmed accidentally, burning myself whenever I cooked. I didn't want to be me anymore, but not to the point where I'd contemplate suicide. But I wanted the version of who I was then to die and be replaced by a healthier me. Realising this, I went to my GP a couple of times to, try and discuss it, and broke down several times trying to explain exactly how I felt when doing it. After being prescribed medication, I began to feel better about, who I am, and also opening up to people. Although that circle to this day is still full of people who, it's a circle that's quite small. Because even though I'm aware of what's wrong with me, and I'm aware that there are people who will help if they can. There is still that small doubt and small thought and small fear in my mind of how people would react. But although I have found that the people I've opened up to are in a similar position to me, and we support one another when we can. Thankfully, I no longer self-harm, and though I'm not thrilled with what I have in my life, I'm slightly okay with the body I have and the struggle I have. But even on medication, I still have days where everything's too much, and on those days where I could go to bed feeling absolutely fine with everything, looking forward to the day ahead. I can wake up in the morning and whatever I was thinking the night before is drastically changed by the morning, and I just don't want to do anything. But on those days, I try to push myself to do something, even if it's something as small as just going out for a walk around the block where I live. It's a victory. Okay, what is your initial reaction to the word men's mental health? What do you feel / think when hearing those words?
I personally think men are a bit sick.
Sick in what way?
Mentally sick. They need help.
Yeah. So do you mean like the feeling Like they've got depression or anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like they might have these certain thoughts.
Okay.
What are not good thoughts. And I know it's easier to say this, but I think people like that need to speak out. But I know it's not. It's easier said than done.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to be honest, people who are around these people that are suffering from mental health need to look at the signs or try to pick up on certain, maybe body language, maybe how they're feeling, maybe just pick up on general life. Maybe pick up on the lifestyle that they're having.
Right, okay.
Because I think it's important, not like the person, because they're not going to feel as confident as the next person that might say, yeah, look, I've got a problem. But I don't think that the person that's experiencing that problem, I don't think they're going to feel as confident and say, yeah, I've got a problem, I need help, you know what I mean? So I think it's more important for the other person, for the person that's around that picks up on the body language or make sure that they're alright, and then they're not just saying it, because you get some people that say, like, yeah, I'm alright, and they're not. And they might do something silly, and then you hear about it the next day and you go, oh, I was with them.
Yeah.
Know what I mean?
Yeah. So there seems to be a stigma or this unwritten rule that makes it difficult for men to discuss emotions, their thoughts and their feelings. Do you agree with this statement? And if so, where do you think this unwritten rule comes from?
I think it's like, no, like a man. I think the way around this, I think, like, 'cause men are meant to be, oh yeah, I am a man, I'm this and that, I'm meant to be strong. You're not in this day and age. You're not. You just need to get all that out your head and just speak up.
Okay, right. So, like, throughout your school and home life, was it ever discussed with you how to manage your feelings, or if you had any coping mechanisms for the more stressful times?
Not really, no. I think people these days can deal with certain issues in their own way, and maybe, but like, these people that are suffering need to, deal with it in their own way, but they need, when it gets too stressful or they can't handle it anymore, they need to speak out. And I know that's easier said than done.
You touched on this a little bit during the first question, but how do you feel things could be changed moving forward?
I think people, like, they could start groups, or they could do groups, or just talk about it in day-to-day life, but not make it obvious. Link it in with something, like link it in with every day-to-day life. Maybe speak to a family member, maybe speak to your friend, and don't be scared to admit, like, you're having problems, or maybe go to doctors. But I'd speak to a family member or a close friend that you feel comfortable around.
This is the final question. Do you know what services or support is available for young men and boys?
To be honest, no.
What is your initial reaction to the words men's mental health? What do you feel or think when hearing those words?
I just think that men's mental health isn't talked about as much as it's like a stigma towards. I think that men's mental health isn't talked about as much as general mental health, or like mental health towards women, because men are meant to act a certain way and there's a stigma towards it.
There seems to be a stigma, or this unwritten rule that makes it difficult for men to discuss emotions, thoughts, and feelings. Do you agree with this? And if so, where do you think this stems from?
I definitely don't agree with it. I think that everyone should be treated as equal, whether men or women. I think they should all be treated the same. And I think it probably stems from just this idea in society that men are supposed to be tough and strong and like in a way like powerful and supposed to have everything under control. So I think it's like people feel like it's a weakness for men to have mental health issues and to admit to things like that.
Throughout school and home life, was it ever discussed with you how to manage your feelings or coping mechanisms for more stressful times? So, like at the moment, you're entering the exam period.
Yeah.
So, has your emotions or your coping mechanisms been discussed when coming up to like exam revision?
Yeah, I feel like, especially nowadays, I think it's important that we see mental health as an issue between everyone rather than, women or men or whoever. And hopefully that means that we're going to get rid of this stigma and things are going to change so things are more equal. Like in my school, we are talked to together about sort of coping with exam stress and that sort of thing. So yeah, I just hope that in my generation, we don't have to have this sort of stigma around like particularly men and men talking about their emotions.
Do you feel that women or girls are treated differently when it comes to mental health issues?
I think they have done in the past. As I said, I hope that is changing. I think it is like nowadays. But I think that people have always tended to see men as stronger and women as less strong and more likely to suffer with mental health issues. Whereas I think it should just be, we forget the whole stereotype thing and we just sort of view people as individuals.
How do you think or feel things could be changed moving forward?
I think that definitely we need to stop stereotyping people, like I said, and thinking that men should be one way and women should be another way. I think it's much more like, as I said, individual, and it definitely depends on other things in people's lives because, we've learned from the other shows that we've done that not everyone is the same, so we need to just see everyone as individuals.
As a young person yourself, what advice would you give to someone who's perhaps a little bit younger than yourself or sort of the same age, who might be in a position of not understanding the feelings that they're experiencing or whether they're in a situation that's bothering them and unsure of what to do?
I'd say definitely speak out and talk to people about it because a problem shared is a problem halved. So, it's definitely better to speak to other people about things and try and get help for how you're feeling.
And finally, do you know what services or support is available for young men and boys?
I do know that we've been researching here about different organisations and things, and there is support out there. There is helplines that people can ring, the Samaritans and stuff, and Calm we've been looking at as well, which is one particularly aimed at men, where people can speak to about any problems that they're experiencing.
Men's mental health, I believe, is not a thing that's heavily addressed. Not until recently, with more noticeable people struggling who've taken their own lives through suffering from mental health. I personally believe that it's very much a taboo subject for some people, especially people of the older generations and everything else. It seems like it's still struggles especially for men as well, because you feel like you can't have anyone to talk to about it, because it seems like as a man you're supposed to keep yourself strong and you can't allow to show weakness, and that's kind of one of the things that you kind of struggle with sometimes, as I've learnt myself. Difficulty showing emotions as well. I think that's that's another thing really that comes across quite bad, because you're not, as a man, you're not allowed to show emotion or weakness or anything else. Other things could be you're supposed to be the breadwinner. You're supposed to be bringing on the bacon sort of thing. You're supposed to be like a resourceful person, and sometimes it's not that. Sometimes some people really struggle finding themselves, and I think that's one of the things that you kind of struggle with, especially when you take mental health into consideration as well. It's like, well, I'm not a strong, tall person with, who stands by their own convictions and stuff. I'm a very passive person, and I don't like confrontation. I have troubles with self-confidence, other things like that. Discussing mental health is it's a good way to kind of address that there is something there, but it's also a good way for you to kind of if you have these thoughts in your head about self-inflicted injuries or something that progressively gets worse, like suicide. It's unless you word it out and you actually hear yourself say it, sometimes for me, this is kind of one of those things. If I have these types of thoughts, and then if I say it aloud, I realize I'm talking utter nonsense. Why am I thinking like this? It's unknown. And there's other coping mechanisms as well. For just take 30 minutes out in your day to just do something that you enjoy, or take more time, do a few hours or something, just something to take your mind off whatever seems to be bothering you at the time. Or have friends. Friends are a big help, especially with mental health issues. And you don't even have to tell everything to one person. You could tell little things to different people. So therefore, you're not bombarding one person with all of the stuff that you're thinking or all the stuff that you're going through. I do feel that it seems more quote-unquote socially acceptable for women to have mental health, and men, it's kind of men aren't allowed to have mental health issues. You're on your own, sort of if you're having this thing, simple, don't think about it. But again, this is kind of this applies to everybody. It's not just male and female, it's to everybody. It's being told, oh, you just upset, you just cheer up. How hearing those words hurts a lot, because basically, I can't cheer myself up just like that. I cannot not be unhappy. It's just one of those things where it's it's difficult, and it gets on top of you when it feels like you've got no support from people. When you thought, when you're talking to somebody and you think, oh no, this person will help, they must understand, and they're saying things like, just don't think about it. I cannot think about it. Simple. I think moving forward, because it seems like it's very much a taboo thing to talk about. It's mental health and the darker side of mental health, like suicide and self-harming. It does seem if we, maybe not it just letting people know that there's stuff there, because I don't feel like it's advertised enough that there is support everywhere. Even for the people who've been going on 40 plus years where they've been in the same job, and it's I've been going through all of this all my life and I've never had anything, but there is stuff there. There is definitely stuff there. Simple as just knowing that there's something there to help you deal with all of these problems that you're going through. It helps. It does honestly help, knowing that there is a safety net for you if you do feel like you're gonna fall through the cracks. Young advice for young people. Talk about it to somebody. Just talking helps. Addressing that you have thoughts or you have feelings or lack of, because sometimes you can go through. Sometimes it just seems like you're just a shell. Sometimes you're just functioning, and just talking to someone definitely helps. From my experience, obviously this doesn't not apply to everybody, but just talking to somebody about it and just letting somebody know that you're feeling like this. And sometimes you feel like you can't tell them everything, but that's relating to what one of the other things of coping mechanisms. You don't have to tell everything to one person. You can tell different things to different people, and it's you don't feel like you're associating all of your bad feelings on one person. Services, I know for a fact, being in work, that if you're having things like this, if you're having feelings like this, or you feel like you're struggling with your mental health or just things at home, speak to human resources. Usually they will help set you up with counselling, or always know, just simple of just asking, is there anything in place? definitely in schools and colleges as well, because that's kind of one of the things is you putting yourself on, especially in your late, like, well, not even in that case, school and colleges and everything, like, you're not expected to be under so much stress, but you still are under a lot of stress. It can't be helped. So speak to counsellors or, your safeguarding officers. That always helps.
So the first thing I want to ask you is, what is your initial reaction to the words men's mental health? What do you think or feel hearing those words?
Initially, the fact that the term's actually being coined, it shows definitely progress. I think the frustration with men's mental health is it's not talked about. So to some, it's not there. It's not visible. It's not in existence. When in fact, it's probably one of the worst things. Male suicide is one of the biggest killers in men aged, I think it's 18 to 35 or something silly like that. The age ranges might be incorrect, but when I first heard the term men's mental health, I just think, okay, something's finally happening with it.
That's brilliant. But there does seem to be a stigma, and like you said, it isn't there, and there seems to be a stigma or an unwritten rule that makes it difficult for men to discuss emotions, feelings, thoughts, all those kind of things. Where do you think that comes from?
Society. I have a massive opinion on this, so I don't know if I might go into too much detail. But it's society and gender. It's the societal norms, gender norms, that men have to come across as strong. They have to come across as the bread bringers. Is that the right term? Probably not. They've got to come across as the person who provides for their family, and to show any form of weakness, whether it's emotional, physical, or mental, is seen as emasculating and not right. I mean, who says what's right and wrong in this day and age? I mean, the world is not binary anymore, but I think that's where it stems from. People see men as the strong breadwinner, and that's just ingrained in our societal culture, our identity, and it's just the way things are going now. I feel like even though there's a massive debate regarding gender, it's encompassing everything. Does that make sense? Yeah,
it's quite an outdated thing, isn't it? But it's definitely still relevant now. With regards to gender and those generalisations and norms associated with gender identity, do you feel that if there wasn't such a thing, if we all had a non-binary attitude, that there wouldn't be that stigma attached to certain behaviours relating to gender?
Definitely. I mean, the idea with gender is, I mean, you're going to have resistance left, right and centre because of how ingrained we are in these kind of things. I've had conversations with people who are very open to the LGBT community, and I appreciate this is more of a gender issue rather than a sexuality issue, who are all open for everything. But as soon as you start talking about letting a child explore their gender, like a boy wearing a dress, they're like, no, there should still be a limit there. And I'm like, well, you're not being as open-minded as you say then. So yeah, I do agree. If there was this kind of no black and white, non-binary kind of mentality to gender and society, then there wouldn't be those issues, because people are seen more equal in terms of where they stand within society and how they can talk about things. So men wouldn't feel like it's a weakness to discuss their emotions in the same way that, again, I don't want to sound like I'm being stereotypical, but women, stereotypically, I'm not putting labels on anything, are seen as quite sensitive. I know many who aren't. I know many who will happily slap me for saying that.
No, but it's very difficult. I mean, these conversations are difficult, and that's why we like to have them, to be honest, because then it's, open to explore and open for discussion and different opinions that can be challenged. I think females find it a lot easier to have a support network to explore their feelings and thoughts and emotions without any fear of it being wrong or to be, laughed at or put down by it. And I think that's different for men. Women have naturally a better support mechanism for anything, whether it be emotional support, physical contact, a hug, anything like that. It seems to be much more available.
Yeah, it's those behavioural things.
Growing up in home or school, was it ever discussed with you how to manage your feelings or coping mechanisms for times that were going to be a bit more stressful or hard?
No. God, no. And I don't I wouldn't put that on any end of, say, family issues, because I would say my family have been quite supportive of anything I've done, whether it was me coming out as gay or pursuing things that aren't relevant to what my mum and dad would expect, because they're the most sports-mad people you can know in your life, and I have no interest whatsoever. But, in regards to school, no. I think the only time I had a conversation regarding feelings, if that's what you want to call it, was during my GCSE year when I had a breakdown, and one of my teachers, who ironically was a female, sat me down and said, you need to like not be worrying so much and work out a way of structuring how your thought processes are in terms of your stress levels. And I don't feel that's kind of the conversation we mean in terms of mental health, but that's probably the only conversation I ever had younger in regards to managing your emotions and your feelings and how to not let it overwhelm you.
So it's probably more reactive than proactive. Something had to happen before you got
definitely
support.
More reactive. Something happened and a teacher saw it and felt like they needed to intervene, whereas rather than like having stepping stones throughout to say you need to be able to manage things as you go along. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. So how do you think this could change for younger generations and moving forward?
Well, I would say steps have already been taken place. This whole talk about it campaigns, just the idea of it's not a taboo, it's not a stigma, and the idea of the more we openly discuss it and openly talk about it, the less of an issue it will be. The more commonplace it is, the more the elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about will become the elephant in the room that, oh look, there's an elephant in the room.
Yeah, we can discuss it. Yeah. And so, as a male in this community, do you know what services or support is available?
There are plenty online. I mean, me personally, I have been through CBT, which is cognitive behavioural therapy, and that is where you go and speak to somebody and they try and coach you into looking at your negative thinking and put a more different looker from a different point of view. But in likes of online, I say the internet is amazing for resource. So, for example, there is CALM, which is, let me try and get the acronym right, Cause Against Living Miserably.
Yeah, you got it.
Which I think personally, I think is a really bad name. I mean, the acronym's great, but I think when you hear the actual terms, like, okay, but that's an amazing resource for men, definitely, because it's mostly campaigning against male suicide. But there's so many others like Mind. Locally, there's my CBT was through the NHS, who were great. Wanted to try and help with other variations, but first and foremost, the internet and speaking to anyone close to you.
Yeah. Did you feel like you were able to speak to people? You did just mention in one of your answers about coming out. Did you feel growing up you had somebody you were able to speak to?
It was interesting, my coming out story. So I first came out to my best friend from school when I was 15, who was a typical lad, and I had a horrendous situation where I thought he was going to disown me because he was a lad, and again, it's that stereotype of gender. But he was great, but I didn't actually come out to my parents until I was 19, through just my own personal reservations. And then when I did, my mum was like, "Why?" I think my mum got more upset that she felt that I felt that I couldn't speak to her, but I think I've had a positive upbringing through life in terms of having people there who I can speak to, where I know that's not possible for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I don't really like to say, oh yeah, of course I did, because not everyone has that same situation.
Yeah, but definitely speaking to someone, whoever you feel comfortable speaking to, is definitely the way forward. Definitely.
I mean, I know some people don't like putting that kind of strain on it. And it's not a strain, before I even go further. It's that personal feeling like you think it is on immediate family. So I know a few people have spoken to cousins, a more extended family, because they're someone that they're close to but not as close to. Or a close friend. Like, I think my best friend was the one who kind of made me say, John, you need to go and speak to somebody, which led to the CBT. But yeah, no, definitely speaking to someone close to you who you feel like you can trust, who will have a objective, is that the right terminology, view of it.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you for your time, John.
This is KCC Live.
Hi, welcome back. You're listening to Amy on Out There on KCC Live. This is our men's show. Some really interesting points of view there, and definitely some things I think we should talk about and discuss. Part of the sort of the men and the mental health sort of side of things also covers suicide. We found a report that the Samaritans had released, and it's why are men in midlife from disadvantaged backgrounds more at risk of suicide. So basically the Samaritans commissioned 5 leading social scientists in psychology, sociology, economics and gender studies to look at the issues that this sort of group of men face. So you can read the full report online, and there's also like a media report as well. But basically what I took from it, the research results are men compare themselves against a gold standard which prizes power, control and invincibility. I think you can definitely see that. Obviously I'm female, in case that wasn't obvious, so it's difficult for me to sort of definitely agree with these things not being a man, but I can see how men do measure themselves. They feel like they have to be successful, and there's definitely a pressure there. So then it says, men in midlife are now part of the buffer generation, not sure whether to be like their older, more traditional, strong, silent, austere fathers, or the younger, more progressive, individualistic sons. Now, again, I can definitely agree with that. There's definitely a shift in generation now. And personally, as a younger person, I'm 28. I don't mind letting people know that. Just don't tell anyone, whatever you do. But it means that I'm lucky enough that I find that most of the people around my age are quite they're quite open-minded, they're not very judgmental, they're happy to express themselves, whereas when I look at the older generations, they do seem to be a lot more sort of reluctant to accept new things, and I think there's lots of reasons for that, and there's lots that we can look into, but that's a whole other show. Also, they think that the research shows that with the decline of traditional male industries, these men have lost not only their jobs but also a source of masculine pride and identity. That is something we'll be talking about a little bit later as well, male-orientated jobs and roles and how that is changing. Men in midlife remain overwhelmingly dependent on a female partner for emotional support. That makes me quite sad that that's almost sold as a downside. You know, surely that's a good thing that we can lean on each other regardless of gender. The main findings are split into 6 key themes, and some of these issues are personality traits. Some traits can interact with factors such as deprivation, unemployment, social disconnection, and triggering events such as a relationship breakdown or job loss to increase the risk of suicide. Masculinity. More than women, men respond to stress by taking risks like misusing alcohol and drugs. I actually read, going a little off topic, quite a surprising statistic. And it was that a man is actually twice as likely to become reliant on alcohol as a woman. And I must admit, I was actually quite shocked by that. But I was sat in the radio station at the time, and I kind of gave it out to the office, and I was like, what do you guys think of that? And every guy in the place, there was like 4 or 5 at this point, were all like, yeah, you know what? Because we go to the sanctity of the pub and we feel like we fit in there, or, you know, it's a good way of not dealing with emotions and stuff like that. So it was interesting to see what they had to say about that, because I was shocked. Relationship breakdowns. Marriage breakdown is more likely to lead men rather than women to suicide. Changes in midlife. People currently in midlife are experiencing more mental health problems and unhappiness compared to younger and older people. Emotional illiteracy. Men are much less likely than women to have a positive view of counselling or therapy. And when they do use this service, it's at the point of crisis. I would definitely encourage anybody to go and seek help if they need it. And trust me, currently I am studying to be a counsellor, and it does work. Even knowing how it works, it still works. It's still getting it out and talking about it and talking your way around a situation to potentially look at it from a different angle, which sometimes can really help. Socio-economic factors. Unemployed people are 2 to 3 times more likely to die by suicide than those in work, and suicide increases during economic recession. We're seeing a lot of people losing their jobs. And of course, that is not easy. We're seeing a lot of people as well risking being made redundant and things like that. And we're in that sort of time where nobody feels safe in their job, and they will question their worth. So, you know, are you worth them keeping you on? You know, why would they keep you on? And going through that again and again and again, I can imagine really takes its toll on people's mental health. Suicide in disadvantaged men in their middle years is a health and social inequality issue. Men living in these circumstances are up to 10 times more likely to commit suicides than those living in the most advantaged conditions. Again, this doesn't surprise me. You know, it's hard to be on the breadline, and I can see how men definitely feel like they'd failed potentially if their family is on the sort of breadline. So Samaritans have 6 recommendations for policymakers and practitioners to debate and take forward. So they think we should take on the risk of tackling the gender and socio-economic inequalities in suicide risk, definitely. Suicide prevention policy and practice must take the account of men's views on what is to be a man. Recognise that for men in midlife, loneliness is a very significant cause of their high risk of suicide. Again, I think men socialise together a lot less, because it used to be that you finished your job and you all went to the pub. And a lot less of us drink now and socially drink and things like that. So we need to find other things, maybe. I am all for board game cafes, but it's not everyone's cup of tea to be playing Monopoly with a stranger. But, you know, that's how I like to socialise. There must be explicit links between alcohol reduction and suicide prevention strategies. And we should support GPs to recognise signs of distress in men. Another thing that I read is men are a lot better at sort of cloaking their feelings than women. So they're harder to read, they won't be as forthcoming about it. So that can make it more difficult as well until men are at that crisis point. And they can provide leadership and accountability at local level. Again, I think this is definitely something that we need to roll out, and doing this show and talking to various people, we're definitely seeing that it's something that's needed to talk about more, and there needs to be more help out there. But there is help out there. After this song, we will actually look at the various places that are available to help out when people are in crisis with mental health.
The Station with Attitude, KCC Live.
Hi, welcome back. You're listening to Amy on Out There on KCC Live. So with men's mental health, there seems to be this huge stigma that people don't want to talk about it. And a lot of the people that I've spoken to that have had mental health issues in the past say that a lot of people are just like, have you just tried just being happy? No, that doesn't work. Have you just tried going out for a walk? Like, people suggest things that they think they don't realise, like the severity of mental health problems. So it can be that there's quite a good analogy for it, where it's like, well, would you turn around to someone who's broke their arm and say, have you tried just not having a broke arm? Or, you know, have you tried going out for a walk? I'm sure that'd fix that broken arm. You know, it's that sort of thing. For something that you could physically see, you go to the hospital. It's not far off. It's, you know, in some cases it's a chemical imbalance. It's not. It's almost a physical thing as well. In some cases it isn't. But there is that stigma. There's that sort of, they call it the black dog hanging over you. Like, it's always there, sort of thing. You've always dragging around this black dog. And I think that people need to understand that a bit more with mental health, and especially with men who are more reluctant a lot of the time to open up and actually talk about it. We are quite lucky where we are in Liverpool. There's an awful lot of charities, various organisations to help with mental health. So it's just a few for you. So there's Mind, there's the Bowness Project, who we will be talking to somebody from shortly. There's Mark McQueen, and Jack's done us a little bit about that as well, so we will listen to that shortly too. There's the Listening Ear, that you can refer to those for counselling. There's the Samaritans, of course, who you can call and speak to. There's Mind Shift. There's Calm, who are the campaign against living miserably. We also have Movember, which is also to do with male mental health, and that coincides with International Men's Day on the 19th of November, because you guys do get one too. And there's Addicted to Life as well. There's a lot of various ones, and I will actually put up the links to them on the KCC Live Out There Facebook page. If you just go onto Facebook and you search Out There, you'll find us. There's a picture of my lovely face with a rainbow flag over it, or some sort of rainbowy picture, because sometimes I get bored and change them. So if you want to check that out, you can. Even if you just give a quick Google, to be fair, there's an awful lot of results come up of help in your area, and I think people can be reluctant to seek help, but it's definitely worth it if it's needed. So coming up next, we have Jack, who's going to tell us about the Mark McQueen Foundation. And then we've got Jake, who's going to talk to us about the Bowness Project.
Mark McQueen sadly took his own life in June 2007 after struggling with depression for so many years. From this event, his family set up the Mark McQueen Foundation to help young men who are struggling with mental health and emotional issues. They do this through supporting community projects like supporting the unemployed young men into training and employment, as well as supporting other projects and charities using the theme of music to work with young men and local musicians, as this related to what Mark's passion was. This was helped through the initial funding from Mark's dad, Doug McQueen, who is still helping the progression of addressing mental health in young men by the projects he helps fund. These projects and charities are also open to donations and volunteering, which you can find out more on the Community Foundation for Merseyside at www.cfmerseyside.org.uk/funds/Mark McQueen Foundation. If you yourself have ever had issues with either mental health or emotional issues, do not stay in silence. Look at these projects like the Mark McQueen Foundation, or look online for projects and charities in your local area.
So we've got Jake in the studio doing an interview. Hi, Jake.
Hi, good morning.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, as I said, my name's Jake Bowness, and I'm a local lad to Liverpool. I'm working predominantly in mental health at the moment. I've recently just started my own community-based project. That'll be running from the 14th of May in the Sefton area, Merseyside. So we're going to be looking at different things like identifying triggers and coping strategies and putting techniques and tools in place so that, to alleviate sort of escalation of people's issues, so hopefully intervening and making sort of the situation a little bit better and the journey into other services and stuff, so acting as a signposting service into other places, making that whole sort of process a little bit more enjoyable, hopefully, for the people who are engaging with the project. And, it's been going really successful up to now. I'm quite proud of it, to be honest. And the feedback, what we've been given so far, has been really humbling. So I think we're definitely on the right track with things, and it's coming together well at a sort of really quick pace. So trying to keep up with it has been challenging, but we're definitely getting there, and I'm excited to start our community group soon.
That sounds fantastic. How did you start the bonus project?
The bonus project came about. I was formally to starting the project, I was under local authority. So I worked for Sefton Children's Services and Youth Department for 10 years. And due to the funding cuts and everything that are affecting the local authorities at the moment, through the austerity measures by the Tories and coalition government, I lost my job at the end of 2015. And at the same year, in October 2015, marked the 10-year anniversary of my dad's suicide. So to come together with, other people from the city. My dad was a musician, very well known and respected musician around Liverpool. So I came to a number of his friends from different areas like business and management and, accountancy, loads of different people that I just went and put my idea to around the project. And thankfully they liked the idea, and they've helped me get it to the point where it is today. So the Bonus project was started on sort of in memory, if you like, of me dad who's passed away. And, we're doing it to prevent other people from sort of going down the same road as what, our ambition is, if you like.
Yeah. Do you guys offer any services for mental health?
At the moment, we're in the middle of our latest sort of fundraiser period. So amongst that, the work, what we've been doing in the community has been very limited, obviously, because we raise our own funds to carry out the work, what we do.
Of course.
Rather than access sort of mainstream funds and channels and be restricted then to the work, what we can do, who we can do it, where we can do it, all that sort of things.
Yeah.
We like to try and, eliminate some of those barriers, do our own sort of fundraising, and then we're not sort of restricted then as to all that, like we was just saying, who you can do it with, where you can do it, when you can do it. So we're doing the fundraising. The community group start the 14th of May.
Yeah.
And as well as that, we've been doing little bits of one-to-one work where we've been going out and engaging with individuals in the community and, sort of seeing where we can fit in, how we can help them sort of move ahead, or people who are sort of harder to reach and not willing to access services, sort of acting as a befriending service as well. And sort of encouraging them, about sort of getting over the barriers, what they face, and, helping them to get into services, and, helping them to get there, supporting them coming back home, just making sure that the whole process is sort of, a full circle, if you like. So there's always somebody there for the people who need that support. So I think there's just far so many gaps in mental health services at the moment, whether that's due to, funds and resources, numbers of staff, all that sort of thing, which, I know there's a number of services out there, and I know we're all trying our best and we're all going above and beyond, and I know that for a fact, because, I go out and I see different services. I'm also now contracted to the NHS, so I get to see, other services firsthand, and I know they are trying, but, for whatever reason, mostly down to politics and stuff like that, there are a number of gaps for a number of people who manage to just slip through the net, and we've been quite successful of sort of engaging with those people who have been through services, maybe had not so much of a positive experience, so to say, and have come away from it, like slipped through the net, sort of faded out into the background, and they've sort of just like either the issues have worsened, or they're just sort of left and faded into a background and forgot about. And I guess amongst all that, people's how can I put it? People's willingness rather to engage again, or to maybe to pick up the phone and say, "Oh, I think I've been forgot about here." People are just happily staying in the little corners what they've been left in.
Yeah. So
the project's been quite good of going into those little corners with those people, building up those relationships, and saying, "Well, let's have another go." You can't sort of tarnish everybody with the same brush.
Yeah.
So we'll go out and engage with those people. We've got like a number of tools that I use with individuals, and start to get the ball rolling slowly. Part of the project as well is, coming away from that sort of clinical side of things and medication, that sort of, generic sort of forms of treatment, if you like.
Yeah.
So we're looking at, like teaching people like mindfulness and meditation and different things like emotional freedom techniques, which is, tapping and Reiki. I've got somebody who teaches Reiki.
That's amazing.
So it's coming away from the whole sort of typical sort of traditional ways in which people would usually, get sort of support or treatment, if you like, from the off. And doing it in a way that's more sort of cost effective, a bit more, tailored and individual to that person, rather than umbrellaing everyone with the same sort of condition of like, oh, you've got depression in your group, you've got like anxiety in your group, you've got eating disorders in your group, where I think that is half the problem as well in current sort of the state of mental health, is people are just sort of put onto these umbrellas with their conditions and issues, and mainly all treated the same.
Yeah.
Due to, whatever their issues may be, where you find that, to treat everybody like that and expect everybody to come out of it with the same outcomes is just bizarre to me. So we, aim to make it a bit more individualised and bespoken. So incorporating each individual's interests and hobbies and stuff like that into the work, what we do with them, individuals, as much as we can. So it's, it's a bit more enjoyable and appropriate to that person.
It sounds amazing. How can people get involved with that?
At the moment, we've got a new website being built, so that's not actually live at the moment, unfortunately. But what we do have is we've got a Facebook page, which is fairly new as well, but we've been putting some stuff on there, like updates and things.
Yeah.
We've also got a closed group online, which is like a safe space that people have been using to, you know, to just vent or get a little bit of advice or a bit of peer support from other people, or, you know, anything that they may sort of, you know, have questions or sort of concerns around. They've been posting up in the closed group, and it's been proven really successful. A lot of people are enjoying it because they spend so much time on Facebook and stuff like that, that it's, you know, when they are feeling a bit down in the dumps and they want to, you know, go on Facebook and rant away like people, like you do, like we all do at times, I guess. But without not necessarily wanting to, you know, spread it to the world, make a big public post about it. People are, you know, going into the group, venting on there. It's, as I say, it's a safe space. It's monitored, and it's a place where, you know, other people will pop up and go, oh, you know what I mean, I'm sorry you're having a bad day. I had a bad day yesterday, and, you know, I'm all right again today, and this is what I did, and, you know, I hope it helps. And so it's a lot of peer support going on as well, and I think that's an important part, you know, to play in. People who are sort of making those initial steps towards recovery is letting them know that they're not the only one out there, you know what I mean? There's a number of people suffering, a number of people all at different stages as well of recovery, but not necessarily saying that, you know, they're any better off than the person who's just starting out, you know. So it's all about, like, building a community and promoting, you know, mental health. You know, I think I often refer to the mental health sort of community, if you to put it in a way. I often refer to it as the invisible community because, you know, due to, like, the stigma and everything else, all the stereotypes what have been attached to mental health for so long, we still have people that do feel ashamed to come forward and say, yeah, you know what I mean, yeah, I do have PTSD and I do suffer anxiety and stress-related issues. And people are, like, still sort of, I think some people are a bit ashamed, so to say, still to come forward and say that, or may not necessarily have the confidence, or, you know, to come forward and say something like that on the basis of, on the basis of, you know, being prejudged, or, you know, you know, another one is, you know, sort of, they won't go to work and disclose it to the boss because they think that the boss is going to say, right, grab your bag, grab your coat and get off.
Yeah, there's definitely still a stigma.
Definitely, and I think, you know, the stigma and stuff like that is very much still there, and I think it's, you know, it's something that we need to, as a society, you know, come together and say, you know, it's all right, you know, it's all right not to be all right sometimes, and we're all human, you know, and I think by talking about it and making it, like, you know, it's okay to talk about it, I think that is also another contributing factor, you know, with the peer support and stuff like that.
Yeah. I definitely couldn't agree more. It sounds like you've created a really nice, safe space for people to talk in, where they all feel really included. So we'll definitely have to keep an eye on the Bowness project.
Yeah, definitely. We are growing at a quick sort of pace, quicker than I anticipated with the work what we are doing. You know, not only will it be run here in Merseyside, but also piloted over in India as well.
Wow.
So I have the former General of Human Rights and Information in Mumbai. A friend of mine called Suprabha Rorain, she will be running the project on my behalf for me across India.
That's amazing.
So the work's currently being translated into Hindi. And yeah, so it's going over there.
So you're conquering the world then?
yeah, that's the ambition. Following a recent trip to the United Nations in New York, I have made a number of contacts that, like, orphanages in Nairobi, Kenya, who are interested in the project. I've got people in Nepal offering me 2 acres of land to go and build an office there. I'm like, let me catch up with myself here at home first. But it's all really, really positive. You know, I couldn't have asked for a better start for the project. You know, everybody who's sort of hearing about it is wanting to engage, whether that be, you know, from a service user point of view, like with our clients, you know, as I say, we're starting our group, our first community groups here in Merseyside on the 14th of May.
Yeah.
Already we've got between 10 and 30 people booked on, which is amazing. It's like, it just seems to be falling into place, but at the same time as we could say, oh yeah, it's all falling into place, I think it's, you know, on the other side of that, it's really evident that there is a need there.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? Because it's not like I've got a magic wand from doing anything, you know, extravagant, so to say. It's fairly basic stuff what we're doing, but, you know, from the response what we're getting, people are just basically taking me both wrists off for it, and I'm just like, oh my God, do you know what I mean? How have we got to this point?
It's amazing.
2018, and it's unbelievable to think that sometimes, isn't it?
It's amazing that you've obviously found that niche though, and you are helping, and you know, you're able to provide people with that platform and that place to talk about these things that obviously aren't being spoken about.
Yeah, certainly, you know, and I've got a number of other people who support. You know, it's not just myself doing the work. I've got a number of people from different areas and backgrounds of professionalism from across the city. So I've got like music managers and stuff like that who manage like celebrity clients in different areas. I've got people who are into like fitness and nutrition. I've got people who teach Reiki. I've got people who teach like meditation and mindfulness and emotional freedom techniques, and you know, a number of different like alternative and complementary therapies and stuff like that, what I really want to incorporate and, you know, introduce people to. And, you know, there's other alternatives out there to the more traditional methods of treatment that maybe the GP or other, you know, professionals may sort of push for from the off. You know, rather, I've got a bit of, you know, anxiety, depression. Okay, is like 40 milligram of sertraline or whatever the, you know, the typical sort of choice of medication is.
Yeah.
At that same point, you know, to teach somebody how to, you know, meditate and breathe properly, and the importance of what, you know, what we're eating and putting in our bodies, how that has an impact on, you know, on our moods, and all these other basic things that, you know, could be also equally as beneficial as, you know, as I say, the more sort of traditional and typical ways of people getting treatment. So, you know, it's more sort, it just makes sense to me to do it, you know, to do it this way, you know, on the news and in the papers and in reports what are produced, you know, we're all saying, you know, that the NHS is crumbling and, you know, the funding's likely not going to land for mental health services because the rise, the constant rise in statistics around mental health, whether that be, you know, sort of at a low level, people accessing the GPs, getting a bit of medication, going into sort of support groups, and then obviously on the higher end of that, where you've got like people sections under the Mental Health Act and, you know, maybe suffering, you know, sort of more significant sort of issues that cause them, you know, sort of more problems down the line and sort of more serious problems at the time, you know, but, you know, everybody, no matter where you speak or you go and speak, talk to rather, sorry, my words all get mixed up now. But, you know, everybody is talking about the same thing. We haven't got enough funding, we haven't got enough staff, we haven't got enough resources. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, if I'm honest with you. From, you know, from the reports and stuff I've seen, the recommendations that have been put forward for change have still been ignored. So there'll be likely no significant changes to the NHS services anytime soon.
No.
And I can't see there being changes anywhere else. So I guess we, you know, as a society or as individuals, myself as an activist, you know, as somebody who suffer, you know, who has suffered and sort of I've got family members, I've got friends, and, as have we all, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've all suffered or know somebody who's suffering. Well, I just refuse to accept that, that's how it is. Well, no, that's not how it has to be.
The Station with Attitude, KCC Live.
Hi, welcome back. You're listening to Amy on Out There on KCC Live. So we're talking about men and men's mental health, and as we've been talking, I've been asking lots of men that I come across in my sort of day-to-day life. So people like my stepfather, my partner, people at the station, usually taxi drivers, just generally people that I come across. Everyone gets questions. I've spoken to a lot of people about gender roles, things like that. And it seems that going through history, gender roles for men have slowly been changing, but it's been exactly that. It's been slow. So going back, if you look at things like Victorian times, Victorians were very sort of stiff upper lip and very, well sort of presented, and everybody was quite sort of stoic, and well, they were thought to be. So men were considered to be that way. You weren't soft, you didn't show emotions, nothing like that. Even that's going through all classes as well. Working class men, drank and worked hard and smelt like men and things like that. And then as you sort of go on through history, recent history, you look at things like the war and stuff like that, real men went and fought and things like that. That was the mentality then. People who were conscientious objectors and things like that were made to look like they weren't real men. They were chickens. Women would spit at them in the street and things like that. So it was, the boys, the men would go out and fight. And then obviously women did join them later on, but again, women were very really on the front line. It was all down to the men. Then keep looking through history, we've got the 50s and things like that. It was the nuclear family. It was the 2.5 children and a picket fence and a wife that stayed at home and baked and was a housewife and cleaned and looked after the children, and had your pipe and slippers ready, and your children were in bed for 7 o'clock, and you read the newspaper, and she was there to sort of look after your needs. That was the stereotypical family. And that continues, but we see then slowly from like the 80s onwards, we get this sort of a bit more equality and men starting to open up and things like that. But it's been real slow going, and even now we're still not there. A lot of men, especially older men as well, have got that mentality of not opening up. One of my good friends is actually an older gentleman, and I asked him about coming on the show and talking to me, and I was like, do you fancy giving me, an opinion from an old gent? Where he works is quite a male-dominated industry. And he was like, to be honest with you, he was like, I see a counsellor. He was like, I'm quite open about that, but when I'm in work, we don't talk about those things. We don't talk about feelings. We don't even acknowledge things like mental health issues. It's a lad's world, it's a bloke world. And that's exactly how he describes himself a lot of the time, is as a bloke. And I found it quite sad, really, because he's a completely different person when he's not in that environment, and he's quite open and we'll talk about things. But to feel that he has to be a certain way like that, and I think that goes across a lot of sort of work roles. So anywhere where there's sort of male camaraderie and stuff, it seems to be that you don't talk about your feelings, you're not very open, you'd have to be that sort of strong male, and words get tossed around and they stick. Things like boys don't cry. I hate the term boys don't cry. I have drummed it into my son as much as I can that if boys want to cry, they can cry. That's okay. Same as people saying man up. That's another one. You go, don't you be soft, man up. Don't cry, Real men do this, real men don't do that. I don't know who these fake men are. Like, are they like holograms or something? Because I'm telling you now, real solid men who are men cry. They do not have to man up. However, man flu, in my opinion, as a woman, is a totally made up thing. And I say to my partner, because he's terrible when he's sick, but mum flu. What's the difference between man flu and mum flu? No one gives a hoot when it's mum flu, but when it's man flu, they're dying. But again, I don't know if this is because men don't feel like they can express how they're feeling, so when they're sick it's a bit of an excuse. Maybe you boys can tell me and enlighten me, and men of course, and let me know, is that what it is with man flu? What's the deal? You can go onto Facebook, search Out There, you'll find me, or you can email me, amy@kcclive.com. I am intrigued. Not being a male, all I know is having to deal with man flu from the other side and rolling my eyes very loudly. So coming up after this, we're going to have a look at gender roles, and we've got a person that we're going to talk to who's actually studying at the moment to go into childcare, which is thought of predominantly as a woman's role. So listen up, more after this.
The station with attitude, KCC Live.
Hi, welcome back. You're listening to Amy on KCC Live on the Out There show. Our subject is men and mental health this week. So looking at gender roles, I know that some job roles people think of as predominantly male. So things like people that work in garages and stuff like that. My granddad on my dad's side was a docker. He drove trams up and down the docks when he was younger, and that was a very male-dominated job. And then I know that he sort of graduated through male-dominated jobs. He was always very handy and stuff like that. And, he was the typical, what we think of as like the 1950s household. He went to the pub after work. He had his Guinness, or 2 or 3. And, he went home, he had his tea. The kids were in bed, that sort of. My nan was quite happy, as far as I can gather, as being the sort of housewife role, if you like. And that worked for them. But then when I look on my sort of mum's side, her dad was away in the forces, and, it didn't quite work like that. He went off and sort of had to go to various places and stuff, and my nan was left with the kids, and, that sort of gender role still there, that she was left looking after the children. Nowadays we think of some jobs as well as being predominantly women, so things like teaching or nurses and things like that. Quite often, if male nurses in a hospital, they will be addressed as doctor, and when they say no, nurse, a lot of the times they'll get sort of funny looks and things. There are a lot of jobs that people don't think of as a male job. When I was giving birth to my son, one of the midwives were male, and it was funny because the other midwives approached me in the room and they were like, "We have a male midwife, is that okay?" And at this point, I am in labour. I am like, I do not care. If you bring Mr. Blobby in, if he's going to deliver this baby, you go for it. But it was the fact that they felt that they had to ask, which, again, I'm grateful that they did, because I understand some women wouldn't be comfortable. But it just shows that people think of that role as being a woman's role, that they had to ask me about it. So we've got an interview with Kyle next, who's going to tell us about his experiences in sort of training for a role that people may consider as being predominantly female. So this is what he had to say. So we've got Kyle in the studio. Kyle's come to do us an interview. Kyle, you studied health and social care, and that had a lot of childcare elements in it. It's something that people consider to be quite a female sort of led and dominated job role. How did you find that?
It was very hard to kind of get into it at first, because there was a lot of parents who were like, "Are you really qualified to do this job?" And
so did you find that as soon as they saw you, they sort of realised that you were male and then just didn't think that you were going to do your job as well as a female?
Yeah, especially with being a feminine-dominated role, it was more of a shock when they first see me, and especially from the way I am and look, being quite alternative and tattoos, piercings, they're like, this isn't really a job role suited for you. Why
do you think that people automatically think of females when it comes to things like childcare?
Mostly because it is a more feminine role and there's more of a caring aspect, and males are usually more in violent and disciplinary roles when it comes to children. So, for example, police work and things like that.
Yeah, so you'd always think of like a headmaster as being the male role, but you think of the teacher as being female. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever find that people were uncomfortable with you, doing changes and things like that because you were male?
Yeah, there was a more parents asking quite a lot, was I being around the kids while it was toilet time and changing them, especially when it came down to pee and things. They didn't want me to be in the same room as the children were when they were getting changed and supervising them in that way.
Yeah, why do you think they were so uncomfortable with that?
More because I am a male and it's more of a female role that people see. And especially with the sexual assault allegations that come from a lot of male teachers.